ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Retro Warriors, episode 328. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Saturn, we have no housekeeping.
No
Well, I mean, I guess we do. We have other shows. You can go listen to Board
true.
Game Barbarians, which is a good show. We have Cinema Rogues, which is a movie show. You go listen to those shows.
If you're on the Patreon, you can listen to Talking Wizards. You can listen to After Hours. You can listen to the Uncuts. There's all kinds of stuff. Justin never leaves a microphone.
I do record.
Just
record
carries
a lot.
it with him all the time.
I do. I'm not on Cinema Rogues, so that's I got that going for me.
If you need your Justin break, that's where
every now and then I gotta take a break from something because I'll go insane.
Now hold on. That's implying that you're not already insane.
I'll go insaner.
There you go.
On the little scale of insane frowny faces, I'm gonna be like way up at the top.
The insanest frowny face.
My week, I got the monkey ball, which is not some type of disease. It's a game. I got it in the mail, and Best Buy only
on the scale of pain. How bad is the monkey ball?
And my Best Buy package was only completely smashed.
Oh, that's nice.
I mean, it came out like a pancake. I was like, oh, great. Anyway. I've been enjoying that. Very fun game. Nice. It's
Holds
good
up
monkey
well?
ball. I don't know why. I haven't read reviews, but you've told me that some reviewers have been unkind to the new monkey ball for some type of physics-based complaints.
From what I read, it was the controls. They said that the on the new version, it doesn't feel quite as smooth as on a GameCube controller.
I don't even know what that means. It doesn't.
I think some people were saying that the notches in the GameCube's analog stick were helping them to aim, but I don't see how you can blame the new game for that.
Or you just use a GameCube controller on your Switch.
If you got the Switch version, I guess.
Also an option.
Yeah, I just got my copy of it today.
Oh, really?
I pre-ordered. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about a week late.
More than a week late, yeah. It was one of many games that I pre-ordered that were delayed at the last minute. Of all the games that were supposed to arrive last week, only one arrived on time.
I do get to play as Kiryu, which is great.
Yes.
And instead of picking up bananas, he picks up little stamina XX bottles.
Nice.
Which is just super cute. I got Sonic unlocked. Apparently, you can play as a Dreamcast.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Which I've yet to see or unlock, but it's fun. It's just a dumb, fun game. I've been having a good time with it. It came at just the right time for me, where I was right before I was jumping into last week's game and this week's game, and the next 2 weeks is two games. Where I was like, I just want something that I don't have to think much about.
Right.
And I was in bed explaining the game to my wife, who had never played it. And she was like, what is it? And I was like, yeah, I got Monkey Ball. And she goes, what is that? And I go, it's a game. She's like, what do you do? And I was like, well, you're a monkey in a ball.
Yeah.
She's like
in a hamster ball.
So the monkey has a ball? And I'm like, no. The monkey's inside the ball.
Yeah.
She's like, okay. Why? And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, it's like a hamster ball. And she goes, why? What do you do? And I was like,
you run to the goal.
I was like, you just go through the level. She was like, but why? And I'm like, to complete it.
She's like, a goal.
And she's like, well, what's the challenge? And I'm like, don't fall off.
The level itself is the challenge.
And she goes, fall off of what? And I'm like the world. You just keep falling forever. And she's like, I don't understand this. And then I go, well, it's also got monkey billiards. And she goes, are the balls the monkeys? And I was like, yeah, how'd you know? And you could tell she said it like it was a stupid statement. And then she goes, oh yeah, I'm sure they got monkey bowling too. And I was like, yeah, how'd you know?
Has she played it since then? Has she even looked at it?
No. I told her, I was like, you have to play monkey ball with me.
Yeah, because it's fun.
But she has not yet played it.
Oh,
no.
that's a shame.
But it's good. I like it. It's the first two GameCube games remade, I think.
Yeah, and also the deluxe features from the PS2 and Xbox ports.
And they don't have all the shitty. You don't have to unlock mini games and stuff. You just have them. It's just
one
fun.
thing I'm a little worried about that I read about it that I obviously haven't played it yet, so I can't speak to it. But one thing I'm worried about is they changed the announcer, and I'm worried if that'll ruin my experience.
Oh yeah. I guess I didn't notice.
There was apparently some drama about it too, because for years nobody knew who the announcer for Monkey Ball was, and some dude like tracked him down by like analyzing voice samples and shit and figuring out who Sega used to hire in that era, and they found that the guy was not credited, and he was just some guy that did voice work, and he happened to do Monkey Ball, and he had never like heard about the game in the many years after it came out. And after they pointed it out to him, that guy took on a cause that other people had started to talk about how more voice actors should be credited. And so he spoke out and said, yeah, Sega should credit voice actors in the future. And then they recast him in the new Monkey Ball remake.
Yeah, I guess I didn't notice. Yeah, I just didn't notice.
So
I'm starting to wonder if maybe these reviewers and you have just played thousands of hours of Monkey Ball, and I've only played dozens of hours. So maybe that's it. Honestly, I couldn't even place the announcer voice in my head. I want to say it was a female voice for sure.
Oh, weird.
But I'm not. I feel like it was, but I really am just not sure, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the Monkey Ball announcer voices, or his voice is so ingrained in my head. When that game came out, I was in college, and a friend of mine, every time that we would get fast food, the second that the bag would be handed to us, he would scream out, "I call Fallout." And the first time that happened, I had no idea what the fuck that meant.
Yeah.
And apparently what it means is any fries that fall out of your container and into the bottom of the bag are now his. It was a little game he had where whoever said it first gets all of the fries that fell into the bottom of the bag.
Saturn, claiming ownership of someone else's property isn't a game. It's just called theft.
Right.
We have a word for it.
And he would always say that the second we would get fast food. And then Monkey Ball came out, and every time that you fall off the map, the guy would just go, "Fall out," and all of us would stare at that guy. And so after that, every time we'd go to get fast food, like as soon as the bag was coming, he would start doing the Monkey Ball voice and go, "Fall out." and so it got even further ingrained in my head.
Yeah, well, not quite as influential in my personal life, so I've not noticed.
Yeah,
but that's about it. Just Monkey Ball.
Yeah, aside from all of my games that didn't arrive on time, like Monkey Ball and Doki Doki Literature Club and Alan Wake, I did get Metroid, which we'll mostly talk about in the future. But one thing I do want to mention about Metroid that concerned me, and this is, it didn't really concern me, it just really confused me.
Yeah.
So this is a discussion of the introduction of the story. If you're super, super sensitive to story spoilers, just skip ahead like 5 minutes. But otherwise, in the introduction, it establishes that the little computer guy is going to give Samus advice, like in Metroid Fusion, right?
Right.
And also in the intro cinematic, you see Samus get kind of her ass kicked by this other thing, this other dude, this unnamed assailant, I will say. And every time that you go to your computer dude for advice, he gives you whatever advice he's going to give you. And then he throws in, "Oh, and remember, don't challenge that unnamed assailant because he will totally kick the shit out of you."
Yeah.
You cannot stand a chance. You are just a piece of shit, and he is so badass.
Right.
And every time you talk to him, he reiterates that to you, to the point to where eventually I just expect to walk into the room and him to be like, it's a good thing that you just recollected your super hyper duper missiles, and now you've got a suit that's just made out of 1,000 smaller Samuses. But just remember, you're still a little piece of shit, and that dude is so strong and cool.
Maybe he'll get condescending and be like, "Oh, here's the widow baby bounty hunter. Can't beat nobody."
Right?
Like, just keeps ramping it up.
Don't forget how badass that other guy is, and he's the most popular kid in school, and his dad owns a dealership. And he's going to get all the good dates, and you should probably suck up to him because remember, he's going to be your boss someday because guys like him succeed.
My God.
That's just very strange how
the computer is an 80s dad.
Right. He seems very, very fixated on how weak you are and how powerful that guy is.
Yeah.
And it got weird after a little while. I was like, okay, calm down, computer.
Yeah, you don't have to keep saying it. We know.
Right. I'm sure eventually something's going to happen that might change the balance.
To me, is there even an option to challenge that enemy?
I'm not going to discuss any story spoilers.
All right, okay,
because I have finished the game now.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
But I will just say that it is weird, the computer's obsession with it. That is as much as I wanted to draw attention to.
Yeah. Let's do some news.
Yes, sir.
First up, Microsoft is releasing a translucent controller for the Xbox 20th anniversary celebration. I want it so bad. I want it so bad.
I saw the news article about that controller, and I was like, cool, a new controller. Wait a second. It's kind of I should let Justin know.
I cannot afford it right now. I've spent that money on an N64 controller for my Switch.
Right.
Because I'm weak. Not buying that Sega controller though, but no, I really want it, man. Want it bad.
I almost have enough Microsoft points to just get it.
You should. I should check my Microsoft points. I think I have like $10 on there.
Yeah.
It's minor discount.
I've got like $60 on there.
Jesus. Homebrew devs have managed to get other Saturn ISOs working in the Cotton/Guardian Force collection for Switch, showing that it's a pretty competent Saturn emulator.
That's pretty exciting, to be honest.
It is. Now, I think the downside is that no real public Saturn emulation project can ever use that code.
Right. Yeah, naturally.
That's basically tainted code. People developing emulators can never look at it.
Right, yeah. But if somebody just wanted to just make it available as Switch Homebrew for pure piracy situation, then yeah, they could do that. But no legitimate emulation author is going to be looking at that code.
After the new OLED model Switch is confirmed to have potentially the same Joy-Con drift issues, Nintendo has now suggested that Switch Joy-Con drift issues will never be fixed.
Yeah, it's impossible. No one could fix that.
That's funny because Valve has heavily implied that their sticks will not suffer from drift.
Sony just came out and said that the DualSense 5 does have some drift issues, but they can't. There's nothing that can be done. It's just going to be how controllers work going forward. All of them are going to have this problem.
Seems kind of weird that Valve is explicitly saying they're not going to have that problem, though.
Some Series X controllers are showing they have a little bit of a drift problem, and the Elite controllers have some pretty bad drift problems, but that's just how controllers work, Justin. Nobody could possibly ever fix this.
Steam Deck's not gonna...
Well, to be fair, we haven't seen the Steam Deck yet.
This is true.
It could end up also having that problem.
They explicitly have marketing around their sticks being robust, durable, and not prone to issues. So
yeah, so if it does happen, they're going to have some egg on their face.
Mm-hmm. Nintendo suggests, never mind, it's the same news story.
Eidos
Montreal will be moving to a 4-day/32-hour work week at no change in pay.
It's just refreshing to hear something positive about game development. I just had to throw that in there. It's been so many stories in a row of workers chained to their desks and beaten until they're bloody just to get something out. But, it's
to be fair, all those stories came out of Ubisoft, so
that's true.
Just relax.
and Take-Two. Let's not give Take-Two a wash here. And CD Projekt, apparently.
Yeah, and Warner Brothers.
And EA.
A sequel to Yakuza Like a Dragon is confirmed, and Yakuza and Monkey Ball series creator Toshihiro Nagoshi, as well as Monkey Ball programmer Yakuza and Yakuza designer/producer Daisuke Sato are leaving Sega.
That's sad.
That's a major loss. Now, we had heard previous rumors that I think Nagoshi was offered some kind of position at some shitty company.
A Chinese company. I don't remember which one now.
I want to say it was like a mobile company or something.
It was.
Yeah. So that's a pretty massive blow to Sega.
They're both leaving. Now, both of them did already state their support for the upcoming Yakuza game, saying they're very excited about it, that the team that's working on it is very competent, and that they all of that team has experience working on previous games in the series, etc. And the staff that is taking over have wished well to those that are departing, so they appear to be leaving on good terms, at least publicly. We don't know internally if there's some strife involved, but it's still just a bummer.
It's the same thing I said before. It's a little concerning that Sega can't afford to keep them when they're such, at such critical positions in one of their more critical franchises.
Right. But
is a little concerning.
Like we were saying last episode, it's become the niche part of the market.
True. Very true.
To all of regular games compared to mobile games.
Yeah. Square Enix is adding paid XP boosts to Marvel's The Avengers roughly 1 year after saying on stage at E3 they'd never add any non-cosmetic or pay-to-win microtransactions to the game. They said it. I saw the clip of them saying it.
They also reiterated that. They reiterated that at the game's release, too. So it's not like it was just a one-time thing that they happened to say that. They've said it more than once. And now they have added those XP boosts, the pay-to-win mechanics they explicitly said they wouldn't have. Which, fuck them.
Yeah. Take-Two/Rockstar finally confirmed the long-rumored GTA Trilogy port to the Switch/PS4/PS5/Xbox/PC. The former versions are being removed from the PS and Xbox stores and Steam. The PC version will only be available via the Rockstar Games launcher because they couldn't give you something without taking something away.
Yeah, and so the leak at this point is saying that it's going to have GTA 5 style controls, slightly cleaned up graphics from the original, and that's about it.
All right then, great.
So.
Near/Bu's 600 DPI lossless scans of all SNES boxes, carts, and PCBs have been preserved and will be posted on archive.org, which is...
They may be by now, actually.
Yeah, which is not only a tremendous win for preservation, but also for people trying to verify authentic stuff.
And it was a good thing, too, because that was... one of Nier's final projects before his tragic passing. I'm glad that it was recovered. Apparently, their hard drive was discovered among their effects, and it still had all these things on it. So friends have uploaded it to Google Drive in the process of later uploading to archive.org. So that's a good thing there.
Yeah. Diablo 2 Resurrected having server issues, which will come as no surprise to anyone that played Diablo 3 at launch.
Yeah, or really any Blizzard game.
Yeah, pretty much at this point. Well, they couldn't afford all the servers. They had to go to legal fees. So, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, what you going to do?
Amico boxed games are now on sale, despite no final release date for the Tommy Tallarico-backed console.
Weird.
I gotta say, man, I don't know Tommy Tallarico. I don't want to sling mud at the guy, but he seems weirdly desperate in the Amico videos. Have you watched them?
I did watch one of them.
I'm glad he's excited, but also you're like, man, you could... what you doing, bud?
What was the show he used to have on G4 back in the day?
I don't know. I didn't watch G4 very much.
This was before Tech TV merged with G4. He had a show on there with somebody else, and I think they just reviewed games. And he always kind of came off as a little scummy. I don't know if that was just like his TV persona or something. Maybe
it's kind of has been his regular persona. It seems. Unfortunate. Now, granted, we only see what he wants us to see. I don't want to imply that Tom Tallarico is a bad person or anything, but he always kind of comes across as this like used car salesman type person, you know. I have, I think, actually negative hope for the Amico at this point.
Yeah.
It's not even that I think nothing's going to happen. It's I'm so sure that it's going to be a flaming disaster that I don't know. It's
the good news about that is almost anything could be better than what you're currently expecting.
This is true. Honestly, I don't want to say I would love to see it, but I would find it very humorous and interesting if people were boxed Amico games and then the system never came out.
Right. Yeah.
That would be a funny situation to me.
Right.
Best Buy announces a new $200 per year Total Tech membership and locks PS5 orders to only members.
Yeah, so this membership is supposed to give you like free warranties on a tech equipment that you buy there.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. If you buy a shit ton of things from Best Buy, I guess it could be an okay value. But then the fact that they're locking purchase of PS5s to only people who are paying this $200 a year, it almost feels like they're preemptively scalping before the scalpers get to things.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Weird.
Final Fantasy XIV is officially the most profitable game in the franchise.
And I think they said they had, what was it, like 26 million active players or something like that?
Oh, statistically, more people play Final Fantasy XIV than don't now. We've hit that tipping point, right, as a species.
Right.
Microids, which is a company, not something you need to see your doctor for, has announced a new Joe and Mac game coming in 2022. I'm actually, this looks fun because I was saying it in the chat today, I'm just kind of tired of like pixel graphic remasters. Like I'm glad they're kind of doing like an actual art style for it like that. You know, Joe and Mac was never like good.
Right, but it was fun. It was a fun little time waster. It reminds me of like a less I don't want to knock the art style in this game that hasn't even come out yet, but it looks like a slightly cheaper version of the kind of art upgrade that Wonder Boy got with
I got the same kind of Wonder Boy feel.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Right.
And then finally, Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack will be $50 a year or $80 for a family plan. Comes with Animal Crossing DLC for all users. Oh my God, all of the things they're adding to Animal Crossing. Saturn, they're adding mood lighting, and I can polish my furniture now. And they've got partition walls. And oh my God, you can set one wallpaper per wall.
Was that
Saturn? No, you put your wallpaper up and it'd do all the walls in the room, and you'd be like, well, I want to have an accent wall. This is stupid. And now you can have your accent wall. They added a frog chair, okay? They added Brewster's Cafe. They added gyroids back, and you can plant them, and they'll get you more gyroids. I'm so excited. I'm just like losing my...
Can I just say for the record that never once in my life have I ever said I wanted to have an accent wall?
Well, I'm sorry that you hate fashion. So, you know, that's on you, isn't it?
It might be on me.
I watched it. I watched the direct they did for it, and I was just like howling, and my wife was like, "Shut up! I haven't watched it yet." And then she watched it, and for 23 solid minutes, just kept going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And then she's halfway through it. She looks up and she goes, "The lady's done talking, but it's only halfway done." I mean, it was like a cartoon. And then she goes, "Oh my God!" Like, it's just like,
as someone who is not an Animal Crossing fan, it is hard for me to justify the price of the expansion pack. It's an extra $30 a year.
It's adding so much.
It's just N64 and Genesis.
Oh, you're talking about NSO expansion. I was talking about the DLC for Animal Crossing.
No, I'm talking about the thing that applies to not Animal Crossing fans.
Yeah, well, I don't know why you would.
So as somebody who is not an Animal Crossing fan, I can't justify that extra $30 a year just for N64 and Genesis. It's nice that it comes with the Animal Crossing DLC for people who have Animal Crossing. Yeah. But for people who don't, that's not a great value. I wonder if down the line they're eventually going to start including other DLCs with it for other games.
I wonder. And really, it's I suspect what they want, because what it is for me, and I suspect this is what they want it to be for most people, is extra $30 a year, but it includes $25 DLC that I'm already going to buy. Not only that, I'm going to buy it twice. Yeah. That's 50 extra bucks. Or... you know, I can just upgrade to the family plan, get it included, and basically get a year for the same amount of money I would spend just buying that DLC and paying for my regular Nintendo Switch Online. And then in that year, they have time to add more value before I have to renew. So, like, for me, it's a no-brainer before I even think about N64 or Genesis. And I think that's what they were shooting for with it.
Yeah. And with how successful Animal Crossing was, that's probably the smartest option they could have done for that. And also announcing it during the Animal Crossing Direct was probably a smart idea to get people who otherwise might not have subscribed to NSO at all to go ahead and jump on that. But for those of us who are not Animal Crossing fans, it's kind of a pretty weak value.
I mean, let's be honest, it's Nintendo. If you're not heavily invested in everything they are currently doing, then it's going to be a weak value. That's kind of their bit, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm excited for it. Like I said, they pretty much made it dumb for me not to.
Yeah.
At this point, but that's because Animal Crossing is huge in my house. We bought a whole nother Switch. We bought 2 copies of the game. We bought the family plan for Nintendo Switch Online. Like it's a whole ordeal. And also I'm still like someone said it in the chat. They're like, they've added so much content to Animal Crossing that it's basically like they've added like 1.5 entire new games to it. And that's what it feels like. So I'm just over the moon. Cannot wait.
I'm looking forward to the screenshots of your accent wall.
You're gonna fucking see it. You're gonna be like, that shit does look good. And you put a nice partition in there, right, with some mood lighting.
There you go.
And then polish up all my plants. Yeah. They're gonna have little butterflies coming out of them. It's gonna look fucking great. I can't wait. They've also added a reason to cook ingredients after farming them. I can't wait. It's so good. Okay. Let's talk about the topic at hand. This week we're talking Actraiser Renaissance.
Yes.
Which is the surprise remake of the 31-year-old multi-genre SNES game.
Yes.
That we mentioned previously in the news.
Right.
It was developed by Sonic-powered, unrelated to Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
And published by Square Enix Worldwide on September 23rd, 2021 on PC, Switch, PS4, and mobile.
Yes.
And as far as initial thoughts, first encounters, I played the original one for a show that we used to do.
That's true.
Originally,
I brought it to your house.
We had a podcast that we piloted, did a couple episodes, and then decided we didn't like it. That was basically us playing a video game,
right,
and recording the audio of the game. You can't see it because it's a podcast,
right?
But basically, recording the audio of the game and us just talking about it as we play.
Yeah, which seems a little weird in retrospect.
You know what? The couple episodes we did of it actually worked fine.
Yeah.
Like the game was like good background noise for what it was, and I can't remember. I think we just quit doing it because it was like
you were
just dragging shit over to my house. It was a bunch of work. Like it was kind of a pain.
We were having to connect audio equipment to the TV and then we had to set up our Rock Band mics because that's how you record things.
Well, now, Saturn, we could do the show over Nintendo Switch Online.
Oh,
we could just do it that way.
I don't have an NSO subscription.
Well, yeah, but when you get on Animal Crossing, it's going to be a good value proposition when you're building your accent walls. So yeah, I played it for that, and I remember I didn't love it. It wasn't bad. I was just like,
it's all right. You're allowed to be wrong every now and then.
Yeah, well, you're wrong about Animal Crossing, so I guess we're both wrong.
Bunch of big wrongies in here.
But yeah, I thought it was okay. It never clicked with me.
Yeah. I wonder if it was just so old by the point that you got around to playing it.
I remember it was this thing where I liked the different genres, I liked the ideas, but interface-wise, it felt dated and clunky, and the action segments felt very stiff. And I was like, yeah, it didn't do any of its individual genres it was folding in well enough for me to stick with it. It didn't do any of them bad.
Right.
Just none of them well enough for me to really put a lot of time in.
I had the exact opposite experience because I played Actraiser when it first released. Around the time it first released anyway, within a few months. It was one of the most impressive games I played on the Super NES in that first year because we had Mario World, obviously, which is obviously a very impressive game. It's an excellent game. And I expected everything on Super NES to be these like cartoons come to life like Mario World was. And then we get Actraiser, and it's got a much more serious art style until you get to the, Cherub, which is not at all serious. Right. But, it was a much comparatively darker game than Mario World. And it had this soundtrack where, like, there was these realistic sounding violins for the time. And, everything was very... it felt much larger than other games that I had played beforehand, and it had these different genres and everything. It made it feel like it was a massive game, even though it's really a game you can finish in a few hours.
Right.
But because of that, it felt like such a massive experience the first time I played it, and so it definitely left an impact on me. It was one of my favorites on the Super NES for many years. So when this was announced, I was so there. I was ready for it. The second it was available to purchase, I had it, and I jumped right in.
Before we jump into Renaissance,
yes,
Brief me on the original game.
So it was developed by Quintet and published by Enix back in 1990 in Japan, 91 in the US, 93 in Europe for the Super NES. Yeah, a lot of early Super NES games apparently got delayed before they made it to Europe, unfortunately. And it did mix traditional platforming stages, which it refers to as action stages, with an overhead town building stage, which it calls the simulation stage. It was released less than a month after the Super NES console itself.
Holy cow.
So it was a really early showcase for the console's graphics and sound chips. It was also an early example of Mode 7 tech, which it abuses. It uses a ton of
I
Mode
do
7.
remember that.
It is like, oh, here's some more Mode 7. Oh, did you enjoy that? Well, here's some more Mode 7. It's, for some reason, they did make a port of it to the Nintendo Super System arcade cabinets.
What
which
a
was
weird
the
choice.
It's the Super Nintendo version of the Play Choice 10, essentially.
I have to imagine they just didn't have a lot of games available when they were making that system.
Yeah, it was made real early in the Super NES's life too.
Yeah.
So they ported Actraiser to the Nintendo Super System. They just removed all the simulation stages, so it was just the action stages, which even as an Actraiser fan, that's kind of a weak game.
So it's just like 45 minutes of Actraiser action stages.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is a bonus unlockable mode in the original, but
there you go.
Anyway, they also released a similarly modified version of the game on feature phones in 2004. And I had it on my LG Chocolate.
Oh boy.
And it's really bad. It's the first 3 action stages, and it cost me $9 American.
Oh my gosh.
It's so bad. And then, of course, the game did get a sequel in 93, which completely removes the simulation mode. It's just an action game. It is a more robust action game with more sophisticated combat mechanics. But personally, I think it's way too difficult and a little overcomplicated. It was fine. But and then there was also there was a feature phone port of Actraiser 2, which I never did encounter that one. I think that one was region locked to not America.
Yeah.
And for some reason, one thing that has always stuck with me about the game is it has really heavy religious context to its story. Really heavy religious context. And Nintendo censored very little of it in the original Super NES release.
Yeah.
Which was very uncommon for Nintendo of that era. They just changed some terminology, and that's about it. Otherwise, it was left completely intact.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Let's talk story, which I would say remains the same between the two games, but really exists in the second game and doesn't nearly as much in the first game.
It's there. It's just it's presented in very brief form in the first game.
You play the Master or the Lord of Light,
right? Which was just called God in Japan.
Yeah, who is suddenly revived to save the people of the land from Tanzra. Tanzra,
who was called Satan in Japan because they didn't care,
a little on the nose,
right?
The Lord of Darkness. Each region you play through has its own separate story vignettes that play out, and they sort of guide you through they're not really simulation segments as much as people might recognize them more as a genre that I guess is dead now, but it's very much a God game.
Yes.
Once the people's faith has reached its peak, the Master will be given strength to take corporeal form and basically play through an action stage and defeat whatever boss is terrorizing people of that region. Right. Lather, rinse, repeat, and that's the game. You go back and forth between God game stages and the occasional action stage until you've defeated Satan / Tanzra.
Indeed.
And there is a lot of unnecessary story in Renaissance.
They did pad it out quite a bit.
The cutscenes are numerous. Isn't a strong enough word. It is a constant barrage of just little things that really don't even add to the story that does exist.
Well, what's weird is in the original, you'll be playing the simulation mode, especially is when it'll happen. Is you'll be playing the simulation mode, and then like the little angel will just pop up and say, "Oh, master, the people want to talk to you." And then there's
Right.
like 2 sentences of something they say, and then it immediately blanks back to the simulation mode. And in
Yeah.
the new one, they took that same concept, but they were like, "Oh, that's not enough text." And so they took those 2 sentences and would stretch it out to about 6 paragraphs, add in an extra character to also have to say some things, and that would still happen at roughly the same frequency as the original, but instead of it just being a quick interruption to tell you that a thing happened, it's this drawn out thing.
Well, in the original, it's like, all right, go do this thing. In this one, it's like, effectively what you're getting around to is, we need you to collect food from 3 different farms.
Right.
But the story is like, oh, God, our farms, their production has been low because my uncle has not been working. Here he is. He's here to tell you about how he hurt his leg.
Oh, Lord,
in an
let
accident.
me tell you about my leg. It is in pain, and I cannot work.
And then the whole time I'm like, I'm God. I'm literally God. Don't you think I have better shit to do?
And even then, don't you think you already know everything? Like,
Right. And so
kind
then
of get to the point.
the end result is collect food from 3 farms as
Right.
it pops up.
Yeah. Which
And
is weird.
so yeah. Well, let's talk just kind of the basic gameplay loop. In each of the towns, you start in the first act by going through an action stage, which will have a boss at the end, and then it throws you into the simulation, the God game portion of that town, whichever town that you've ended up in.
Yeah, there's 6 towns, and you just go through each one.
And they start with just your temple in the middle, and you build out. The actual simulation gameplay is very hands-off, very God game style. So you'll go down, and you don't ever actually directly build anything except for certain defensive structures.
Yeah, and even that is only in the remake. There were no defensive structures in the original.
Right.
All you could build in the original was roads. That's it.
So you will direct your people to build in certain areas, and as the game progresses, they put up more roadblocks, and you have to use these different miracles to kind of clear the land of obstruction and hazards so that your society can continue to build outward from your temple and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually fight things. Now, in the simulation mode, you control the little cherub, your like angel companion.
Yeah.
Who basically runs around, and you tell them to tell the people to build roads in certain areas, and the town just pops up automatically, right? And so there's no like city planning really to be done.
Now the city does evolve, and the newer version does a better job of telling you that it has gained a level, whereas in the original you just kind of had to pay attention. And as it evolves, the people are able to build better structures that can house more people and better farms that can feed more people.
Yeah.
However, they won't ever get rid of old structures. They will leave those shitty structures there forever unless you clear them out or an enemy does.
I love that the people in the game you're just like this kind, benevolent deity to them. They're always like, oh, host of hosts. Like they're just very... very into it. And then you'll like go in there and destroy every single building in the entire city.
I will raise their town over and over till they build it the way I want.
Yeah. But what it actually amounts to is a lot of you kind of saying, all right, build over here. Then you patiently wait for them to build.
Right.
After they've built certain things, they'll start popping up random resources that pop up from farms and stuff that you fly around with the cherub and obtain to help you build the city out larger.
Right, which is also new to the new version.
And then there are enemy spawn points, which are added in Renaissance, where
the enemy spawn points were always there.
Now they comprise an action segment.
Right. Now that you have to actually do something.
So as you're running around as the cherub, there are certain points where enemies will come out, and as you're sitting there waiting on your simulation to simulate itself, you'll have to shoot little arrows at these guys, which gets to the point that it's just annoying, honestly. I'd rather just sit there and do my simulation. And I think this particular portion of the simulation gameplay loop is what wore thin for me.
Yeah.
I made it a little over halfway through the game, and I was just like, man, I'm not having a bad time, but I'm having a slowly worse time.
Yeah, I feel like the they did so much to try to add more gameplay to the simulation stage without taking away what it had before, that it ultimately results in the simulation stages feeling padded out compared to where they were, which really gives the entire game a lot more padding than what it had before.
Well, so in the first town, I'm like, all right, there's a couple enemy spawn points. The first thing I do is I work my way there, and then the game goes, oh, no.
Right.
You can't defeat that enemy spawn point. You have to wait for the story trigger. And I'm like, all right, well,
and
I'm in the tutorial town.
Right. That was the thing that really frustrated me in this one is in the original, you just have to take them to the monster points and they'll destroy them. They're going to take care of it. They don't need to wait for something to happen. They just do it. And in this one, it's like, oh, they're not strong enough yet. Yeah.
So, and in my head, I'm like, well, I'm in Fillmore. It's the tutorial town. It's whatever. And then you have to go through these story segments, which again are usually just like, oh, Lord, we need 3 more roads because we walk on roads that we use to travel. And you're like, stop speaking, please. I'll get your roads. So you'll get multiple really benign story segments that you have to go through. And what frustrates me is they do have, and we'll talk about their importance in a little bit, but they do have these hero characters.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll pop up in these story segments, so you feel compelled to watch them because they each have their own story.
Right.
Which is not interesting, but is slightly more interesting than that of Farmer Joe who hurt his leg.
Right.
And so I'm going through the simulation. It's story gated me, and it's gated me with really boring, benign story.
Right.
And then finally I get far enough through that I can destroy the spawn point. I work my way up to Act 2 of Fillmore, and it goes, all right, now you're on to Bloodpool. You're on to the second town. And when I get there, it's like, okay, well, I know how to build a town now, so I'm going to immediately start building outward. And they go, oh, yeah, you can't defeat that spawn point you just built out to till you watch more story. And it's the exact same story with different character art. They
lost their kid
them.
in Bloodpool. It's totally
oh, my God.
different.
Yeah, and they still need me to get food from 3 farms, Saturn.
And he needs bread. You have to bring bread to him, but it's his mother's bread, so it's more important than regular bread. It's very... there's boats and stuff in Bloodpool. It's very different.
It's just like, and then by the time I get to the third town, they're like, okay, start again. Yeah. Oh, you made it to the spawn points immediately because you understand the basic structure of how this game works and how each successive miracle that you have to clear away the land works, and it's easy to tell just by looking at it by the visual cues because it is well designed.
Right.
Well, hey, listen, we need you to get food from 3 farms, but we want to explain to you why we need it. And you're like, oh my God, people.
Yeah, it feels increasingly handholdy compared to the original game.
Yeah.
And that's pretty frustrating.
That said, when the simulation would just stop and let me simulate things, it was fun. It was, it was a good time.
Yeah, it was very peaceful. You just get to shoot some bad guys with your little arrows, and occasionally do some miracles and constantly raise their buildings until they learn to build them the way you want them built.
Now, they do add an entire new gameplay. They add a third genre to the game,
right?
In tower. Well, I guess it's tower defense.
Yeah, it's they call it siege mode.
So basically, every now and then, monsters siege your town. You have to build defenses, and you use these hero characters to direct them to kind of choke points to defeat monsters. In the beginning, it's pretty easy. You got one hero. You've only got a couple of defensive gates that you can put up, and you put up these palisades to kind of direct the flow of the creatures.
Right.
My problem is with a good tower defense game, you should, as long as you know where the monsters are coming from, be able to pretty easily predict the path they're going to take.
Right.
And the monsters in this game take completely bizarre, nonsensical paths.
I did learn how to cheat that by the end.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So when you build roads, they will only connect if you specifically point them in the direction of another connecting road.
Correct.
And if there is even a millimeter where 2 roads are not connected, monsters will not cross that. So as long as you only make one path that goes directly to your temple, monsters will go the back-asswards way to get around to that path. And you can just make sure that you put all of your defenses there. And it did make some of them easier until I started getting flying monsters, and it just ruined my whole fucking day.
Yeah. So, I do want to say that the tower defense mode it's fine early on, but it rapidly increases in complexity, frequency, and length.
Yeah, and by the end of the game, it is incredibly difficult. There is, so without getting too much into it, they added a post game after you finish the game, and it has some siege stages, and one of them is just brutally difficult to the point to where I won through pure luck. It is just rough, and I don't see a way to consistently win without luck in it, and I never like that in a game.
It just like I like the idea of the tower defense and that they added it and that it's something to kind of break up the simulation mode, but I would have liked to have seen maybe more effort put into the tower defense system and less, I don't want to say effort, but time put into the barrage of nonstop cutscenes.
I think my bigger problem with the siege sections is just how frequent they are.
It is a lot,
and they seem to increase in frequency the further you get in the game, and that's it feels like a constant. Like the first time, it was like, "Oh, cool! This is a new thing I can do."
Yes.
And by the time you get to the later areas, like, "Oh, another one. Do I have enough things right now? Did I put I guess I.
What's frustrating is sometimes you're waiting to finish a quest, and a lot of the quests are just timer based. You're waiting on a farm to produce a thing that you need.
Yeah.
And you're running up against the clock on the next siege, and through no fault of your own, you have to deal with a siege just because the game's like, yeah, we're going to spawn that in 10 seconds, but the next siege is in 4 seconds. So siege.
Yeah.
And it just seems like a system that doesn't reward efficiency.
Yeah, it doesn't have a great balance to it.
And I like the idea. I like that they added it because, again, simulation mode. Otherwise, there's just not a lot going on.
Right.
They did also, and we touched on it earlier because I guess we're kind of talking about action stages now. They added action stages where you destroy the enemy spawn points. So as you find these enemy spawn points on the map, whenever you get past whatever story-gated content is blocking you from destroying them, you can then go in there and fight them. And they're fine. I like that there's more action stages in the game.
Right.
But
they're pretty short and they don't add a lot to it.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking like less than a minute long, single screen kind of affairs.
Some of them are 2 minutes, I know, because there's a timer on the screen that'll tell you have 120 seconds.
So I like that they added it. It's not fantastic though.
Right.
It's just kind of more filler in a game that feels like it's packing in a lot of filler.
Yeah, it does feel like a lot of the things added to this version of the game were added just so they could say they added more things to this version of the game.
Right.
The original game, I think, still holds up pretty well. So I think if they had just cleaned up the mechanics, it could have been fine. But and while I do appreciate a lot of the stuff they added to it, some of it does feel like it was just added for the sake of adding things.
Yeah. Let's talk about what is the standout portion of the game for me, which is the actual acts, the main act stages and the action mode in the game. The original game, I don't think the action was bad in, but it felt kind of stiff. You could really, it just felt stiff. Yeah. This one adds so much. You can, you've got like an upward thrust, a downward thrust. It feels like you have so much more mobility. You've got a dash mechanic, which I don't know if it was in the original or not.
No.
The like backward dash thing that you do.
Yeah, the back dash was not there. No.
Yeah. They add a lot of different just moves to it that makes it feel so much more dynamic and fun. I truly enjoy the action segments in this game, like a lot. It's just for some reason it feels very like old school Castlevania-y to me.
I can see that,
and I can't quite put my finger on exactly why, but it is that same level of satisfying as like Rondo and Bloodlines, like that old Castlevania. Yeah. It's just really good action platform.
The up thrust and down thrust alone add a lot to it. As far as and the game expects you to use them too. A lot of the enemy placement is very much built around the idea that you have the up thrust to defend yourself, so that you don't get knocked back.
They also add the crystals, which I love that. So, whenever you start a new stage, as you kill enemies, you can collect this currency, these crystals, and the more crystals you have, the more of a boost you have to your attack and your magic.
Yeah, and if you get enough, not only do you have your attack and magic boosted all the way, you also get a free revive. So you literally can't die until after you've used that, which basically gives you a second health bar.
Right, which I love this mechanic. It gives me a reason to go around exploring the levels, finding stuff, killing trash mobs.
Yep.
It really incentivizes exploring these really cool, really well designed, action levels.
And it also, along the line of exploration, in the original game, you could collect scrolls that would give you one more MP to use in that level. Mm-hmm. They still have the scrolls here now, but now they boost your max MP.
Yeah.
And there's 3 per stage, and it keeps track of which ones you found on the overworld. So you know if you've missed one, which gives you an incentive to go back and try to find it if you so choose.
Yeah. I really absolutely adore this whole crystal mechanic. It adds so much to the game for me. I also really like the spells in the action segments. Just the whole spell thing in general, having different spells, being able to change them out, picking up the scrolls, tracking your MP. It's just a very good, meaty, fun action game.
Yeah, the being able to change spells on the fly mid action stage is a huge improvement over the original, because in the original you had to choose it before you went into the level, and you could only have that one spell, and you could only have, I think, up to 6 casts of any spell total. Yeah. And now you have this nice big MP gauge that can grow as you go along the game. And different spells use different amounts of MP too, so you can actually, if you start to run low on your nice spell, you can still fall back on your other spells, which is, it gives you a lot more variability in your attacks.
Right. I do kind of, I feel like the action segments in the game are so good that it makes the not bad but not nearly as good other sections of the game feel worse by comparison.
Yeah, at first I really appreciated some of the changes they had given to the simulation mode, but it feels like they reiterate them over and over again. Whereas in the original game, you still basically did the same thing in all the simulation stages, but by each stage would have different miracles you would need to perform to clear off the map, and each stage would have a different thing that you would have to do to keep the people moving and keep them producing. And that's still in place in this one, but there's all this other stuff they added that make all the stages feel much more samey.
Yeah.
And I feel like that takes away from the simulation sections a lot.
I do also very much like the boss battles in the game. I think they're very well done. They're very hard sometimes.
Yeah, right.
And maybe you can talk more about the later boss battles and the late game, because again, I made it to the 3rd town and I was like, man, this is just... Because there's 6 towns or 9 towns?
There's 6 towns total.
Yeah, and I made it there, and I was like, I just cannot handle this simulation mode repeating 3 more times from the ground up. Yeah, so I put it down.
Yeah, it continues to be a good mix. Unfortunately, my biggest complaint about the bosses is it feels like they stuck so close to the original design of the bosses and their original attack patterns that with the new tool set that you have, some of them kind of feel like a joke. Because you can kind of cheese through them. Now, to make up for that, some of them do a healthy amount of damage. But again, if you get all your crystals, you get a free death anyway. So it does kind of take some of the difficulty away. Granted, I was only playing on normal, and there's like a hard or maybe even a hard
I was on easy mode, and I love the easy mode in this game because it's very easy.
One, you get infinite lives, which is nice.
Yes, highly recommend. If you like easy modes, this is a good one.
Right.
So late game, because I know, because I think we both kind of had the same trajectory with the game, which is we started and we're like, man, this is very, very good.
Right.
And then we kind of hit the midway point, and I was like, I honestly quit because I was enjoying it so much, and it started to get repetitive and unfun. And I was like, no, I'm going to stop here, and I'll come back to it at a later date when I'm feeling fresh on it again.
Right.
Because I don't want it to wear out its welcome with me and me stop liking a game that I am enjoying. I feel like you pushed through and by the end of it, enjoyed it again.
Yeah, so I hit a lull at about that same point in the game, at around the third town, where I was kind of getting a little burnt by just how much it was slowing down the sim section of the third town. And I just skipped the last action stage in the third town. I went straight to the fourth town just to get things going again, and played through most of the fourth town before I came back and finished the third town. And that eventually got me going again to where I was enjoying the game again. And some of the later hero characters that they add are really dumb, but their writing is all right. It makes them come off as kind of goofy, but man, some of it's just so dumb. But one thing I really enjoy is eventually you get the ability to summon in heroes from previous eras to help with the siege stages, and ultimately you can summon in 2 previous heroes to help out. And I didn't even realize it early on, but each hero has their own bonus. Like the first hero gives everybody an attack bonus, and the second hero gives everybody a defense bonus, and then it's a range bonus, a speed bonus, and then the fifth hero makes all of your heroes and forts automatically heal. Like they just regenerate health constantly. And then the sixth hero just boosts whatever boosts the other heroes have given you. And if you learn to pull in the right heroes for this, you can really turn the tide on some of those siege stages. So I thought that was a really interesting mechanic that I wish I had noticed earlier. It probably would have made some things easier.
For all the tutorials in the game, you think they would spend some more time with that one.
But they barely even mention that. But no, it's by the end of the game, there is some complexity to things. However, there's also some tedium because it does just keep barraging you with those siege stages. That's my biggest complaint, is just how many siege stages there are. I can get past the really long drawn out text sections. They're dry.
I just got to a point that I was skipping all of them because as soon as you finish one, it pops up and your quest tells you what it needs you to do.
Right.
Which makes them functionally useless.
Right. I mean, if you're only concerned about the gameplay, then yeah. But if you're also concerned about the story, there is some
I was
story
only
there.
really concerned about the heroes. I didn't really give a crap about the regular townsfolk.
Right.
You know, and that was the hard part for me, was differentiating between what is someone telling me about, you know, Farmer Joe 3.0 and how he hurt his leg,
right?
And what is the actual hero story?
And it's weird. All of the more dry story, the stuff that you're skipping through, is the story from the original game that they have padded out. So I already knew all of that story. I'm just like, okay, I get it. What are you? Okay, it's that one. All right, I got it.
I did find it kind of frustrating. The hero characters are, I mean, they're fun enough, but they're so cliche that you almost immediately figure out their entire story arc, and it becomes redundant. I mean, if you've seen any anime in your life, the second you see one, you're like, oh, that's their entire story arc. Done. Oh, look, it just played out exactly as I anticipated.
Right. Yeah, okay, so they didn't have any great writers here. That's what we're saying. One thing I will say...
It's Square Enix. They make Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy. Yeah, I mean, why would they have good writers
on staff? One thing that we have not mentioned at all this entire time, which I suddenly realize is a fucking crime, is the soundtrack. So the original soundtrack is phenomenal. It's stellar, and you can choose to listen to the original soundtrack as you listen to this. And for people who are not familiar, the soundtrack is composed by Yuzo Koshiro, who also did the first 2 Ys games, the original Dragon Slayer games, Revenge of Shinobi, Streets of Rage. Dude has a phenomenal sound track record as far as making soundtracks, and he did Actraiser, and he also came back for this remaster and composed all new scores, because there's the original soundtrack, but then once you get past Fillmore, every town has new music that was not in the original. And not only did he make these new songs, he made 16-bit versions of them on the Super NES sound chip, so that if you're listening to the original soundtrack, you still get to hear the new music as if it was being produced by a Super NES.
Yeah.
Which, man, what a great feature to add to a remaster.
And it is a really great soundtrack.
Yeah.
We also haven't mentioned, we just skipped this whole segment as far as presentation. We also didn't mention the way the game looks.
Yeah.
And I feel like it I don't want to say it's a bad looking game because I personally love the way the game looks.
Yeah.
But it does fall somewhere between like PSP and WiiWare.
Yeah, I can see that.
Kind of visual thing where it's like because it's not, I mean, it's like this weird, like, I don't know. Like, do you remember when the Wii came out and you would play your fancy Wii games and you'd be like, man, this looks real good. And then you would get close to the screen and realize that they were tricking you,
Right.
that it didn't actually look good. It mostly looked like shit because the Wii was pretty low poly, you know?
Right.
But at a distance, it looked great.
Right.
It kind of has that sort of feel.
I don't know what you're talking about. I played the game in 4K and it was fine. No,
I know, and somehow it still looks like an up-resed PSP game.
It does.
Even the interface looks very large PSP-esque. It's to the point that I kind of wonder if this was, and when someone brought this up in the Discord, I wonder if this was like a canned PSP or Vita game.
You know, I definitely get the PSP analogy. I absolutely see that. And to me, it just strikes me as that budget download-only title look.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And comparing it to WiiWare is probably a good comparison. And I don't know if other budget download-only titles have started to look better over the years, and I just don't download enough of them to notice.
Yeah, they definitely do. I think it is that era of like early Xbox Live Arcade, WiiWare kind of downloadable games. Anyone that played games in that era, you know what we're talking about immediately.
Right. Yeah.
Like especially for like any of the WiiWare, the Konami games they did, the like Reloaded or whatever they called them.
Yeah, all the Rebirth games.
Yeah, Rebirth. That's the series I'm thinking of. It's that same kind of like weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Like, these are technically better graphics than the original. I don't know if they're good graphics,
but they're technically better.
Yeah,
and that's what counts.
It is strange, but I still enjoyed it. It was a nice upgrade from the original.
Yeah.
Without bogging it down with too many effects or anything. I do like in the first stage, in the first act of Fillmore anyway, there's this effect where the light is coming in through the trees. Mm-hmm. And that looked really great. And I was like, man, if they can keep this up, and they totally did not. That's like the only time in the game they pull off that kind of an effect.
So I'll say that it's a very stylistic game.
Yeah.
But
it's not bad,
I could see someone that maybe didn't play a lot of games in that WiiWare era, being like, oh, what is wrong? Why does this game look like this? You know what I mean?
It definitely has a budget look to it.
It does. I think it's endearing. I think it fits the title well.
Right.
And
I don't know if it fits the $30 price tag well, though.
I don't know about that. I think it fits the content well. Yeah. A game that is maybe padded, maybe a little more complicated and longer than it needs, maybe more ambitious than it needs to be. And so I think it fits that really well, but it definitely does have a distinct, unique style.
Yeah.
And then I guess this is kind of transitioning into final thoughts. But I thought it was a very solid game. Mm-hmm. I love if there's a way to just play the action segments, I'm going to do that.
You can after you finish the game. It unlocks.
I'm not going to. God damn it. Yeah. I do think it's a really solid game that does a ton to update the formula, but it suffers from that classic problem of they add lots of content, but it's not necessarily meaningful content.
Yeah.
I don't know that anything in the game that I experienced was bad.
Right.
It was just pacing and fluff that reached a point where I was like, man, I'm going to come back to this later. I need a break from this because it's just like, okay, here's your town. Now start over with the same cutscenes over and over and over again. Oh, what's that? No, it's going to be another hour and a half before you play the next action segment because look at all of these tower defense segments we've added.
Yeah, but we're going to give you 3 90-second action stages in the middle there. That counts, right?
It simultaneously feels like too much and not enough all at once.
Yeah.
While also still having fun individual systems. It honestly, if I had played this and you'd be like, oh yeah, it's this is our early version of the game, it comes out in 6 months, we're still kind of tweaking stuff, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes exact sense. You know, it feels like one of those games where they were just kind of right in the final stages of like, all right, everything's in place, everything works. We just need to tweak some stuff around as far as pacing and content.
Right.
It's so close that it hurts.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a good game, and I had a fun time with it, and plan to one day have more fun with it when I can stomach 3 more towns starting completely over from scratch.
And a 7th town if you play the post game, which I recommend you do, because the action stage for that one is excellent. Unfortunately, there is no Act 1. There's only an Act 2, so you have to get through all the sim stage to get to it. And also the new boss they added for the 7th town is excellent. That was a real challenge of a fight, but very, very rewarding. And it sucks because when I finally did kill it, I cheesed the final hit and like skipped some animation, and so I totally missed the whole last couple of seconds of it.
Oh no!
I was very upset. But no, it's a very good conclusion. However, I say that that last boss itself is very fulfilling, but then the resolution to the post game story is not at all fulfilling. It's just like, and that's the end.
For a game that wouldn't shut the fuck up, that's shocking to me.
Yeah, like the little angel dude's like, oh, everything's fine. Well, yeah, but like, what was that? What happened? We'll never know, and everything's fine.
It's fixed. Goodbye.
Yeah, it's just very frustrating.
Congratulations.
Yeah, pretty much that. I really enjoyed the game. I obviously enjoyed it enough to finish it. And I like a lot of the new stuff they added. I do like the changes they made to the action stages. I don't know that I'm ready to call it better than the original. I think that it is different than the original in a lot of ways. But I think that some of the extra padding they added
hurts it.
Might detract from it enough that it kind of just puts it on par with the original. They're different takes on the same format. If you need a more modern style gameplay and the old one is just too clunky for you, then yeah, go with the new one. But if you're finding the new one to be too verbose and wordy and drawn out, then go to the original and find out how snappy and fast it is.
Yeah.
So I almost wish they could make a middle ground where they took the best of both games and made a really stellar game. But that said, I still recommend this new one. I still think that it was really fun and worth playing.
Well, I recommend that. I could hear you scoff at me.
Yeah.
I recommend that you go to our Patreon. At patreon.com/Retro Warriors. You can get Talking Wizards and uncut episodes. It's a good time. We have lots of contents there that you can download.
Talked about them earlier in the show, too.
And we do want to thank the following patrons for making all this possible, starting with Jammo.
And Platform Agnostic.
Neon Rocket Ship.
Jordan Ish.
Luke Saracen Clark.
Dave Nelson.
Jerry Voz.
Amarlian.
Puff Puff Please.
And David Martin.
Are all patrons that make this show possible, and we thank them so very much. And we thank you for listening to us this week, in this episode.
Yes.
Thank you for doing that.
We're still here. We're still recording, Justin. It's live.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. And we'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.